Hello, Telvanni here, and I just woke up from a few hours of sleep, and I wanted to give you guys a bit of an update on my league start progress. I started with the new skill Lightning Conduit this league. The skill is fairly powerful, especially early on, and it will absolutely melt bosses in the campaign. However, as I've said many times, I've never been much of a racer or very good at the campaign in general, so it took me a little bit longer than it would have on Spectral Helix, for example, to get to maps. But I think this is mostly because it's a new skill, and I wasn't really familiar with the ins and outs of the build yet. One of the things I've learned is that Orb of Storms is incredibly powerful to deliver shocks with. It has a very large AoE, so it's good at clearing, and because it shocks every time you cast Lightning Conduit, it is very strong for single target as well. However, Orb of Storms really makes you play aggressively and in melee range for the most part, so I've swapped out of it as my main skill, as I don't like playing casters in melee range. Mostly because casters don't get access to things like Elusive or Fortify, so they're very squishy when you put them in melee range. I tried out Hydrosphere, and while it was really good for exposure, I didn't like how delayed it felt. Also, I think Hydrosphere is bugged right now. The skill says that you can hit it once per second to inflict ailments, and that it is supposed to pulse while affected by ailments to deal damage to nearby enemies. So when you hit it with Lightning Conduit, even though Lightning Conduit removes shock, it should still be applying chill from our Elemental's Ascendancy. Unfortunately, Lightning Conduit can remove shocks to stop Hydrosphere from pulsing, but it doesn't seem to apply chill. So Hydrosphere will just stop pulsing entirely, and you'll have to cast it again in order to use Lightning Conduit. So I decided if Hydrosphere was out, and Orb of Storms makes you play melee, I'd try out some other skills. Stormbrand is decent for ranged use, however it doesn't really get enough AoE coverage in my opinion. So for a while I was using both Crackling Lance for AoE clear, and Stormbrand for single target encounters. However, I've since swapped out of Crackling Lance and picked up Kinetic Blast. In order to make this work, I'm currently running a Lycosidae, as Kinetic Blast is an attack, and will need to solve for accuracy somehow. Eventually I'd probably want to use the Vagan Veiled Craft on my wand and swap to a real shield, but this is a 1C problem solver for right now. Kinetic Blast honestly feels amazing for clear, as it will bounce off of packs of enemies and explode on the ground, shocking everything multiple times. So you can usually get off a couple casts of Lightning Conduit per pack, but unfortunately you'll need to be casting Kinetic Blast quite often in order to use Lightning Conduit. Unlike Stormbrand or Orb of Storms, which will let you cast Conduit for 5 to 10 seconds before you need to reapply them. This is why I'm still using Stormbrand in addition to Kinetic Blast. This, however, does make the build even clunkier to play. I guess the best way to describe it is like, have you ever played an old Lightning Arrow build back in the day? One where you used both Lightning Arrow for clearing and then swapped to Barrage for single target on bosses? Well, imagine that, but also imagine GGG buffed the shit out of the game, so now there are map bosses every 5 feet in the form of Arch Nemesis rares. And on top of that, you were playing both your clear and single target skill as Bladefall Blade Blast. Yeah, it gets pretty convoluted pretty fast. I think for this reason, even though the clear is much superior on something like Kinetic Blast, you'll probably see most people using Orb of Storms or Stormbrand only, as these skills make Lightning Conduit less of a 2-button build and don't necessitate a skill swap for trash versus bosses. Right now, I'm still working on my Atlas completion, and I've been trying to make my Lake of Kalandras as difficult as possible. However, even with like level 8 difficulty lakes, I mostly get garbage rares, and the best drop I've had is like 2 chaos from a chest. Like sure, you could get an absolutely OP amulet with plus 6 levels to gems and 200% elemental resistances. But realistically, will you? Probably not. I'd expect Grimrow to come out with a video in the next few days explaining the very basic mechanics of the lake, as well as giving us an idea of some of the more advanced fundamentals, so we could probably use that as a base for doing some more advanced strategies in the future. I'll probably make another update video in a day or two if I make any discoveries about the league or the build, and if you're interested in watching somebody stream Lightning Conduit, I think Zizarin is playing it at the moment. However, you'll have to keep in mind he is playing on hardcore, so some of the things may not directly translate to a softcore environment. But for now, I'm going to get back to completing my maps, as I've still got a lot of work to do in the league start. Anyway, thank you for watching, good luck with your league, and I'll see you in the next one.